Well, again, everyone, I'm Larry Hamilton. Thank you for tuning in today. Thanks for watching. Today we're going to do an oil painting, and I'm going to show you a little bit of instruction of how I created this particular scene and on my computer in just a second. And I want to welcome you to another live broadcast here. And this will be re-edited after the broadcast, and I will repost it on YouTube after the fact. And so you can always download it if you can't watch it live, or if you miss some of it in a couple, 3 days after the broadcast. I'll have the video ready and you can watch it then. So anyway, we're painting a scene today from Colorado. It's an oil painting, and it's a place that I visited about 3 years ago, and it's in the Rocky Mountain National Park. And it's a very nice little hiking spot called Bear Lake, and it has a beautiful view of a mountain behind it called Long's Peak, which is probably the largest, it is the tallest mountain in the Rocky Mountain National Park. And it has an area on the side of it, on the east side of it, that artists call the keyboards. So we're going to paint the keyboards today from Rocky Mountain National Park, Bear Lake. So I'm going to step over to my computer, and I want to show you a couple of things of how I took the photograph and made this sketch out of it. So bear with me. Okay, here we are. I'm at my computer now, and I'm going to show you the photograph that I took of this particular scene in Rocky Mountain National Park. And there's a lake called Bear Lake, and it's a very, very beautiful lake, beautiful hike. It's about probably less than a mile to hike around this particular lake, and it has these beautiful scenes all around it. And so I'm going to try to do this scene justice today, but I did crop it down a little bit, and as what you've been watching is the scene that's been cropped down slightly, and I think I have it here for you. That is it. I must not have shown you the original photo. Anyway, this is the scene, and I've been showing. There's the crop scene here. Took a little of the sky out, took a good bit of the water out. This lake actually has some rocks in the foreground, which I may put in there if I don't forget, because I have quite a bit of water in the foreground, and I want to make sure I don't. There's the grid that has been up on the on video for a while, so if you had a chance to take a look at it, maybe even do some rough sketching, you will be ready to go. I also have created my value map, which I always do. So this gives me an idea of where I want the darkest darks and the lightest lights, and a couple of the intermediate values, so that I can kind of hopefully make my value pattern work. It gives a nice interesting look to this if I can stick to this value pattern. The sky was actually lighter than the snow that's on the mountain, and so anyway, from this I made the sketch, and which is on my easel. I'm going to step over there now, and I'm going to finish it. I have it almost finished sketching it on my it's finished sketched on the transfer paper here, but I'm going to finish it off and show you how I make that on my canvas. So without any more time here at the computer, this is the sketch, and this will be available on my website when I get the video edited and upload it to YouTube in about 2 or 3 days after the broadcast. This will be on my website, so you can actually download it and use it as your reference if you're not painting along with me today. So let's go back over to the easel now. What I have up here is my, let me zoom in on this. This is my sketch. If you've watched me before, you know I do my sketches on tracing paper first to work out any issues with the sketch, with the composition or whatever. And so I have it on tracing paper, then I put transfer paper behind the tracing paper over my canvas, and that's how I transfer this image. So everything that's you see in red here has already been transferred, been copied. So I'm just going to use my red pen here that I use to do this tracing so that I know where I have traced and where I have not. And so I'm just going over these pencil marks that are on this tracing paper and going to finish out. These are some of my dark areas that you see in that value sketch. Basically that's finishing the sketch. And so I want to now take that off and get to my canvas. So first step is to take off the tracing paper like this. And then you have left the transfer paper. This is a white transfer paper that transfers the image in white, almost like, it's not really pastel pencil, it's a transfer type of medium, which works for all of these transfer papers that you can buy. But they have it in white, they have it in different colors, yellow, I think they have it in black for sure, like graphite. So I use that on some of my watercolor paintings. So I take this transfer paper off, and behind it I have my canvas, and that is what we'll use as our guide for painting today. So I don't know if I'd shown you that for a while, and maybe some of you have missed it on other videos that I've done, but that is how I get my image from an original photograph, a cropped photograph that I've maybe shrunk down or changed the composition slightly, and I get it on my canvas. So I think that's ready to go. I'm going to make sure I have my camera set okay so you can see the whole canvas. Okay, so what I want to show you now is my paints and my brushes. So I will flip to that camera and explain to you, these are my Bob Ross oil paints as I usually use. And I have about 3 Bob Ross brushes and a painting knife here, and the rest of them are from Treckle. So let me go over the paints first using my Bob Ross painting knife here, and tell you again that this is titanium white, this is phthalo blue, Prussian blue, midnight black, this is Van Dyke brown, dark sienna, alizarin crimson, sap green, cadmium yellow, yellow ochre, Indian yellow, and bright red. And I add to my palette a Grumbacher color called ultramarine violet, and it helps on some darks and some nice shadows. I also have my paper plate here with some liquid white, which is a Bob Ross color, and some of my medium that I use called Liquin by Winsor Newton. The liquid white helps slow down the drying process. The Liquin actually speeds up the drying process. So I have that available to me depending on how I want to treat the canvas at a particular time. And so we'll use that. Let me show you the brushes here. This is one of those Bob Ross blending brushes, or big landscape brush, he calls it, a 1-inch. I've shown you my palette knife that I use from Bob Ross. I also have a fan brush, and I have a script liner from Bob Ross. That's the extent of my tools from the Bob Ross set. Then I have these brushes. These are synthetic mongoose brushes from Treckle. I have several filberts here. I have a number 16, a number 10, a number 6, and a number 2 filbert. I really like those brushes. I like the way they handle, I like the way they hold the paint. Then I have some flats. I have a number 12, a number 4, a 0, and I have a little round brush as well. Then I have a few other palette knives that are Master Touch or something. They're just standard palette knives that you can find in any art store. I may or may not use those palette knives. I may not use all those brushes. I probably won't. But anyway, I have them available, and so I think I'm ready to get going now with my painting process. So let me flip back now and put my palette on the screen in another position so you can watch me take the paints off of it and watch me paint. And by the way, if you have any comments, please type them in the chat window. I have another computer up here by my easel that I can monitor. And I will be looking at it, and if I see a comment or a question, I will try to answer it live while we're on the live broadcast here. So let us get started. I'm going to take a little number 10 filbert here and put some liquid white in it just to get started in this sky. I prefer to paint my oil paintings top to bottom, back to front. Many artists say it doesn't make any difference how you start, where you paint, where you start from. Some traditional teaching will tell you to put on your darkest dark against your lightest light to start with. Sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't work. But I want to put on some of this liquid white so that I have a nice underpainting here for the sky. And I'll come back right after that and put this sky right on the top of this. We'll be able to blend that sky out very nicely and softly. The day we were there, it was somewhat cool actually. The altitude of this particular lake is about 9,000 feet or 9,500 feet. And the mountain in the background that we're painting the keyboards on is 14,000 feet. So this area here, this represents the long peak, and these little angular marks here will represent the keyboard, which makes it look like a keyboard of a piano when the snow is caught in little crevices here in such a way that they're dark and light colors. It looks like the keyboard of a piano. So that's why artists and others have sort of named this the keyboards. And you can Google that, look at keyboards at Bear Lake in Rocky Mountain National Park, Colorado, and you will see some images. It's a favorite photography spot. Many people take photographs of this, and so my photo was like probably thousands of others. So with that done, let's start putting some color in the sky. I'm going to keep this white in my brush and pick up a little of my phthalo blue and keep it light, keep it very light and white. It doesn't take much phthalo blue to override anything that's on the canvas here when you have most colors, except when I have this liquid white on the canvas, it does help thin out this phthalo blue quite a bit. So I'm starting at the back and we're going to work our way forward. So I'm painting the farthest thing away first, and we're going to move our way forward and down through this painting. So let's put a few more, a little darker at the top. So I'm just able to blend this very nicely with this brush that I have here on top of this liquid white. It really works very well. A little sky over here, a little sky hole between these two mountains. And I think I want just a touch of alizarin in here to sort of make it a little pinker in some areas. So I'm just going to put a little bit of that in and give myself a little bit of a warmer. Alizarin is a cool, warm color, as opposed to the cadmium red or the bright red in this case. So it still helps carry the illusion of distance, and the cool colors recede and the warm colors come forward in any painting, in any color scheme. But if you have a cool red, it will help carry the idea that your painting has some depth in it. I'm touching in a little bit of midnight black here to get a little gray in the brush. I haven't cleaned my brush, haven't even wiped it yet. But I want to put a few things that look like some maybe light clouds or something in the sky. I don't want this whole to be one boring blue color or whatever. I want it to have some texture and some other things going on. Here maybe. I'll pick up a little more titanium white and maybe put in just a few things that look like there might be some clouds up here floating around. It was a bright sunny day, kind of cool, but it was in it was in the month of June. Excuse me. So much of the snow melt had already occurred. Excuse me, folks. I'm having a throat problem. Okay, I turned my microphone off there for a second while I had to cough. I don't want to cough in your ear. So anyway, we have just a little bit of a light sky here with a few fluffy clouds floating around. And that's pretty much going to be it for the sky. I may put a few more things in there, but I think that's going to be good enough for right now. Sometimes when I talk too much, I have a lifesaver. Thank you. I have a throat lozenge that I just popped in my mouth. Benjamin, thanks for for the recommendation. Okay, so let's move on. We'll start with these mountains in the background. And the snow has a bit of a gray color to it, probably even a bluish gray. But the snow, actually this part of the mountain right in here is really almost white. It has snow that's getting hit by the sun. The sun in this case is coming from the left, and so it's coming in here. We have some clear white, almost pure white, toning it down just a little bit. I'm going to put a few more spots of snow in here where I can see it obviously from the photograph. There was a patch of snow over here on this mountain. So I'm just sort of going by what I see in the photograph and where the lightest lights are. And I may come back and put a little more paint on this, but at least I want to sort of block those in. And there's some more over here running up and down in this area here. There's some, looks like some, I'm not sure if it's snow exactly or if it's, I think it's just the rock is really has a bit of a tone in it, and it's got bright sun shining on it, so it's almost white. I'm going to pick up a little bit of my dark sienna. You might have a color called burnt sienna. It'd be the same thing. Over here, I want these to be bright. I'll put some dark marks in there in a minute, but so that's a start there. These are pretty far back. Pick up some gray and some brown, change the color a little bit back here. Okay, so kind of covering up some of my sketch marks there that I want to come back and put some darks in and highlight some of those cracks and crevices, but kind of just blocking this in right now. A little bit in this area right here is something that's darker, has more of a gray cast to it, I want to say. Probably darker than the canvas. The canvas, I forgot to mention to you, has a gray gesso covering on it. It's an acrylic type paint and water-based, and so it's a mid-tone. It's sort of a mid-value, probably 5 on the value scale, and I use that. I like to use that because I can say if I have a value in my painting that's darker than mid-value, then I should be able to see it darker on the canvas. If it's lighter than the mid-value, I should be able to see the lighter value on the canvas, but if it's the same value, it should look almost the same tone as the canvas. So it's a very good way to help keep your values in check a little bit. I think this is a shadow right in here, sort of a, there we go, something like this. Got a couple little bump ups here that stick up. Get some sun on them. Some have some brown, some have some gray. Not trying to make a photorealistic rendering of this mountain, but I am trying to get it as representative as possible, particularly when I start putting in the piano keys. Okay, so we're making good progress there. So I have some more mid-tone here that's almost the color of the canvas. So I'm just using midnight black and some titanium white, and popping it in there. Put it in some of these areas where I want it to be between the snow valleys. Might be a little hard for you to see that. Could make it a little darker for you, but basically I'm just filling in this area back here. Got some more browns and the contrast of the dark and the light really start seeing the snow pop out now when I start putting these little dark things in there like that. Faster way to paint this might be to just paint this whole section in a gray tone or a brown tone, and then come back and put the white fingers in, but kind of like the way this is working right now. So I'll just take my time, and unless you're in a big hurry, I'm going to try to take my time and do it this way. So I'm painting around the piano fingers now, painting the dark, be called the dark keys, I guess, of the paint of the piano. Let's see, here's dark. Gotta make sure I alternate them, or I'll be making my keyboard look erroneous. So you're starting to see some things that look like they're dark in the recesses of the mountain. And the top of this mountain, like I said before, is like 1,400, over 1,400 feet. So it's too light. So that's kind of tedious and a little time consuming. But again, that's the focal point that I'm trying to get you to see. Some more paint on this brush. Minimal cleaning of my brush here. I'm just going back and forth in the paint and picking up different colors, kind of mixing them on the canvas, mixing them on the brush, and just coming down that mountain. Okay, I'm going to stop there. I'm going to come over and start looking at this mountain over here. I think this mountain has a name. I'm not sure if it's the one they call Half Mountain. There's a mountain called Half Mountain. I don't know if that's it, or if it's this little curved thing here that is known as the Half Mountain. But anyway, I'm going to put in some of these colors here. And I got to make sure that it looks different than the colors above it, so that it actually stands out. Otherwise you won't be able to tell one from the other. It's really kind of light, but I'm going to come back and put a dark shadow behind that and bring it down. This all comes down. This starts getting kind of, I don't know if it's grassy. I think it's got some small pine trees over there that dot this part of the landscape. I'm just going to block this in, and we'll come back and put some trees in there and other stuff. Okay, now let me come back and get some Van Dyke brown with a little bit of midnight black. We're going to go up here and put in some real shadows in this thing. Okay, now you can see that mountain. You can see the edges. And over here I want it to be a darker. So let's Since we have very strong sun coming from the left, we're getting this nice bright side over here. And I want you to be able to see that. I need to put in just a little bit of left a corner up here that I didn't hit with my brown color. Light brown. I've got a piece of canvas missing there, uncovered. Okay, so there. So all this down here now is light browns. I'm going to put in some greens over that, make it look like we have some little pine trees growing out there. They're so far away, it just looks like a green, almost like green grass, but it's really little pine trees sticking up. I'm still using my number 10 filbert here, and see here, I want to make sure I get my stuff straight. Where am I here? Sometimes it's easy to lose your place here. This has a bit of blue in it, so the blue and this brown will give me a gray. Sort of trying to make this look like it's sort of curved and coming back. Okay, so it's looking about the way I want it to. Big, long, sweeping areas. We got another light. This area here, right in here, I'm going to make sure that I have it touching this little mountain below it. There's a mountain that sticks up here below it, at least in this scene. Make sure I have that painted in. These little swoops are all nicely painted in, so that I'm painting above the next set of mountains that come forward. So I want to make sure I have the canvas covered and I don't have any problems there that are going to cause me to have blank canvas. You don't want to have blank canvas anywhere. Okay, so this is another set of mountains. All right. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in. I'll see if I can answer them. Go up here and put in just a little more dark. It's not quite abstract shape enough for me there. Okay. So we have crevices and we have places that are holding the snow in up here. So I want to make sure that that's noticeable. All right. Now we have this area over here on the left. Put in a few more things that show there's a bit of texture going on in here, so it's not one bland color. Something like that. I'll put a few things of trees or green things in there. Okay. So let's see now. Am I doing okay here? Now this is the next set of mountains down here that I want to bring in. Let's see here. Let's change the color. Let's get a, we want to have them, even though they're light, they're in the sun, and they kind of stick out. I want to make the underpainting a little darker so you can actually see them here. So that looks like another mountain there. And it's the contrast between what's in front of it and what's behind it that tells you what's going on there. It tells you there's something in front of what's behind it. If I didn't have that contrast, if it were all the same value, you would end up with really confusing the viewer as to what the heck you're doing. And just look like one big gray mass. But we know how to fix that. Keep that from happening. Okay, coming down here, more mountain. Have some areas that are lighter and some that are darker. Coming down to the top of the trees now, so I want to make sure I have the canvas covered again. So that's what I'm doing here. I get into these trees down below. Okay, pick up a little more of my white and see if I can get another value of gray here. Maybe right in here, lighten it up just a little. So see the contrast now, all of a sudden you're seeing another layer. It may not actually be another layer of mountains, but it's giving depth to this painting because of the contrast between the dark and the light. Let's block that in. Looks decent. Over here I got some more light that's got to go in. All right, so I've got areas that are lighter, areas that are darker, and I'm going to work on that some more, but those are sort of just my block-in phases here. Over here, this area has some, look at that again, get us some more white and my midnight black. I'm using the heck out of midnight black here. It's almost the same color. Leave that, come back and get some more over this way. So because this mountain's so large, there's a bunch of these, all of this is casting a shadow here on these other mountains. Even though they're pretty high up, you know, I'm standing taking this picture, I'm at 9,500 feet. And so it takes a pretty good sized mountain to put a 9,500 foot mountain in shadow, which is what it's doing. All right, so I've got a nice bit of underpainting there. I got some things that look like mountains, so I'm happy with that. And let's see here. Do I want to keep working on these mountains? I probably should just keep on going with this thing until I get down to the tree line, which is what I'm getting close to here. I'm just going to scrub in a few things to sort of make those, make sure I've got the canvas covered between where I put the trees here. It's just a whole lot of mountains there. There's some interesting hiking trails that I've read about that are in that area. Okay, so let's stop with that, clean out my brush, and I mean Bean 98, welcome. Have all the videos. Well, glad you like them. Glad you like to follow along and try these things out. They're a lot of fun. I think I'm going to, before I get too far away from those mountains, I'm going to come back and now put in some of this snow that I want to put in between these areas to show you the, like right in here, putting in our first white piano key. And keep the brush kind of cleaned out on this one because I've got those darker colors nearby, and with those being there, you have to sort of clean your brush because you pick up the gray that's underneath it. So in the spring, summer, when the snow melts, these things, eventually you can't see them because all the snow in these cracks and crevices melt and they don't look like piano keys anymore. But if you get there at the right time of year, you can see them. There's a bunch more snow up this way. It comes down, kind of feeds these keys. So we were there middle of June in 2014. So that time of year there was still a good bit of snow hanging around. But again, remember this is almost 10,000 feet up. So where the lake is 10,000 feet. So we're seeing mountains that are much higher than that, 14,000. So anyway, let's just put some of this in and bring it back. There's a little piece up here on top that I want to pop in some snow up there, and maybe a little bit over here. So we have a lot of that going on. A little bit of that goes a long way, but that's basically the idea of the piano keys, where you have a light and dark, and they're not perfect because they're crevices that have been created by by years and probably centuries of erosion and so forth. All right, don't want to make them too perfect. I want them to have some abstractness with them. Well, I got this brush. I'm going to put in a little more definition on some of these areas up here, and put in some darker colors and some spots. There's another little area here that I think I had, but I painted right over it. All right, now, what else can I do there? I think I'm going to stop with that. And the areas on the right, further over here, have some light colors to them, and I've already put some of that in, but I want to come back and now put in a little bit of definition behind that so that we have some, you can see the dark will make the light pop. And that's what I want to show you now, just putting in some very light vertical strokes, brush strokes, I'm able to show you there's something else going on back there in those mountains. Over here there's some things going on. So basically just don't leave it one color back there. Don't leave it one area that's blocked in. After you block in, you want to come back and put in some shadows and put in some highlights. Here I don't need a lot of highlights, I don't think, but I do need to darken it up a little bit. So that's that one. Over here, let's see, there's some areas that were definitely darker here. I could use my palette knife for some of this, but I get so comfortable with these brushes. They feel like I can do anything with these brushes I need to do. So again, putting that shadow on the right side helps tell you the story there. I'm using my number 6 filbert. Mean Bean 98, your name is Linda. Well, thank you. You're welcome. And so now let's look at this mountain here that I think they call Half Mountain. Maybe they don't, but I read that in some of the research for this area. I'm going to lighten it up. Now I've got some dark in there, excuse me, but I don't have the light. So let's put some light stuff in there. And when I do that, now you're going to be able to see that this is the other face of the mountain coming down this way. And all of a sudden I'm telling you what? I'm telling you that's a mountain there. It's got a highlight on it. It's got a shadow on it. So if you can get 2 values and preferably 3, you'll start showing real 3-dimensionality. And no matter anything you're painting, as soon as you put a second value in, you start showing definition of form, and you start showing the subject you're painting. Mountains, sometimes a couple values is good enough, but whoops, I want that lighter. But just leaving some abstract shapes on the right side of this helps it immensely. There are some little things of snow floating down around here somewhere. All right, so we're getting this area here looks kind of bland and kind of nondescript, so let's make it have some definition. Let's put some shadow on one side. Whoops, I got too much other paint in my brush. See, I didn't wipe my brush out. Picked up that other color. But if we start putting in some things like that, all of a sudden you see something that looks like it might be another protrusion or something there that's like that. So think about the contrast. Think about light and dark, dark and light. If you got something in your painting you can't tell what it is, try to put a dark value behind it or put a light value in front of it, on top of it. It's really what gives painting its depth, because you got a 2-dimensional surface and you're trying to fool the eye with optical illusions, and the way you do that is with contrast, abstract shapes. And all of a sudden you've taken a big bland area that was just all a couple of colors and turned it into several mountains, several. Hello from France. Welcome. All right. Now I think I'm going to try to find this, a little bit of this green color that I have in there. I'm going to use some of my yellow ochre and some of my green, sap green and yellow ochre, and see if I can get just a few tree-like things going on back in here. I don't know how this is going to work. I may have to scrub it out and do it over, but let's just put in a few, just using the flat side of this brush to add some textures back here that look like they're, could be grass, but I think it's more small, short pine trees sitting back there. And I really don't think that's dark enough, actually. I want it to stand out, but I want to I'm not sure if that's the way I want that to look or not, but I'm going to just sort of scrub it in, leave some unidentified shapes out there that the viewer can decide what that is. And while I got that color, I'm going to move it over here in some of these other areas. These have some green substance on them, whether it's, I don't think it's grass, I think it's little trees. This is pretty far away. But I'm going to make them just a little darker than what I had back there. Why is that? They're closer. The darker colors come forward. So we got this green sort of populating all over the place back there. So we'll just throw in a little bit and just sort of leave it at that. It's not covered in trees, just has a few of them are hanging around. Okay, there are actually some on the back side too. Don't want to forget my shadow side here. Put a few in. All right, let's stop on that. All right, let's step back, take a look, and look at the composition and see what we got. Compared to the original, it's looking pretty close. I see one area I could show a little better definition in the mountain. This area here is almost too dark. Well, it's dark, but I don't have the light over it, so I want to show you again how we're going to lighten that up. White, titanium white, a little midnight black, and in this area right here, it's not light enough. So that mixed with a little bit of my dark sienna or burnt sienna will give me a little bit of this change of color that I want back there to help identify this as another piece of mountain that's sort of hanging out there. These areas here, I think I've got to make those darker a little bit. They're starting to run together. You can see the difference in the, it's too dark, but I can make it lighter by just giving it some upward brush strokes like that. And all of a sudden I've got another piece of mountain here that I didn't have before. Put a few vertical brush strokes in there, help define it, and I think maybe we'll let that go. Got this all pretty well colored in. Okay, I have a lot of green in this painting. There's a ton of green in here. This is green, 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 green. And I don't like to have a lot of green in my painting. That's why I almost rejected this painting and didn't try to do it, because of all the green. And also, we have a ton of clones. Have you heard me talk about clones before? You don't like clones in your painting. I'll put a few little marks in here to give me a little bit of a... I'm trying to change the color of that a little bit. Put a little blue in it. Kind of blue will push it back a little bit. Even makes it look a little more like pine trees. So I just put a little bit of phthalo blue in my brush and sort of thinned it out a little bit, and this is too blue. Come back and bring in a... Okay, as we come down, we're going to start coming forward. We're going to get into this other whole bank of trees. This is all greenish stuff down here. So I'm going to get a big brush, I think, and start working on it as big a brush as I can use and still get the job done. As one of my watercolor painters used to say, what size brush are you using? 16 Filbert. Tony Couch, great watercolor artist, used to say, I'm using as large a brush as I can use and still get the job done. I'm going to put some phthalo blue in this so I can have some contrast. And these areas down here, the ones that I drew in down here are the darkest areas. These areas right here are really dark. So I'm going to pop that in with the blue in it. Throw in some of the... So it's not all green. I want this have a dark color to some of this. I can find my shadows again. It's these areas here like this. And in here, I'm just kind of blocking in again some of this. That's going to give me a place to put the lighter colors. But I want these shadows to be very, very dark. Phthalo blue will do it. This ultramarine violet will add another color that's going to give me some dark in there. Notice I'm not painting trees. I'm not even trying to paint trees. I'm just putting in abstract vertical shapes here that are going to be in between the lighter colored trees and more toward the bottom. So I'm trying to get a set of darks that I'm going to be painting over and adding to. But these darks have to be, if you notice my value map, I just had a few of them poking up. But I want to have these in there so I can paint around them. So I'm painting the darkest darks. Phthalo blue, ultramarine violet, midnight black, a little bit of sap green in there to green it up a little bit. Over here we've got a bunch of stuff that's got some darks in it. So I'm kind of getting away from the photograph a little bit. I still have some of that going on here, but okay. My danger is, my risk is that I'm going to move my, the danger is I'm going to have this color that's not going to be in harmony with the colors up above if I don't do something about that. Just put a blob up there that I don't like. So I have to be conscious of that because I changed this color quite a bit. So I'm going to pop in some other colors here. Okay, big brush. All right. Now, let's come back and start working on some of the lighter colors. I'm going to put some of my yellows in there, and these greens, and with the blues, actually I have 2 blues, phthalo blue and Prussian blue, and I have 3 yellows. So, what's that mean? I can get all kind of green colors out of 2 blues and 3 yellows. And if I throw some of my sap green in, I can even get some more. So I'm getting a lot of color here that see if I can get it lightened up a little bit here. This brush is almost too big. I think I need to tone it back. I'm going to pick up this little number 6 here. I want to get some nice little tops on these up here. Need more ochre, yellow ochre, Indian yellow, pull some other colors in, brighten it up a little bit. What's that look like on the camera? I have to turn around and check it to make sure, but so if I can have the ochre on the side toward the sun and have the sap green or darker color on the back side of my brush, so it's kind of like double loading. I'm not really consciously double loading, but that's kind of what's happening here. I can actually make it, give it this nice bright look of a million trees. Just turn the brush over and paint on the back side for a while. Turn it back over and paint on the yellow side for a while. So I'm putting in a lot of, trying to get away from total green. I want to have some of the mixture. By putting those yellows, ochres in there, you see what's happening. I get a nice variance in the texture. And if I put in some of my bright red, pick up a little bright red is the complement of green, and so that gives me sort of a grayish color in some areas. So I'm just going through this and trying to make it look like I got a million trees out here without having to paint a million trees. The yellows, bring it together. So it's looking like I got a million trees out there. I want to put some more darks in some areas, maybe to help break up some of these. When I get too many bright areas, I want to come back and put in a few more of these darks. But so far it's not looking too bad to me. Okay, let's get some more yellow in there, more ochres. The red really helps give you another color or two. It's got a lot of water in it, or not water, but thinner. Put some more of that red over here. These trees actually, when they start, they have, some of them have red in them. It's from them usually dying or having some kind of disease or something, but we just kind of finish this off over here on this side of the canvas and keep moving. See, I don't want to have a ton of Okay. So, just keep working it here, keep working down. I'm getting into the snow line now. Down at the bottom there's actually snow drifts that are laying here in the grass, or in the along the bank of this lake. And I want to preserve areas for those, so I'm kind of working that right now. And trying to avoid painting into those areas if I can avoid it. Okay, I got to go back, make sure I got my canvas covered. I see areas that kind of stick through there, so I don't want that. I have to stick my head over almost. I have a new light over here on the right side of my easel coming in this way, and it's making a glare. I think I almost need to turn that thing off. The glare makes me have to almost stand in front of it to be able to see. Okay, we're making good progress here. Tons of trees, tons of trees. Pick up some more ochre and reds and this little filbert makes a nice top on some of these trees. So putting the dark in and just painting around them has been a nice way to do this. It's got given me the areas I just want to lighten up and fall in around these things. It really works pretty well. I'm happy with that. I'll be too red. Come on. The way I'm painting, since I'm not washing out my brush every time and coming back and getting new paint, I can blend this, since we're painting wet on wet, I can blend this right on the canvas and actually take out the colors and put colors back in. And if I get too much of one color, get it too light, I can put a color over it. If I get it too red, I can put some green back over it. If I get it too yellow, I can do the same thing. So it's really a nice way for me to paint. This is sort of a style I've developed, I guess, on my own after watching many artists see how they paint oils, how they paint different objects. To green, let's pick up some more yellow. Put some yellow in. There we go. Just, I'm pushing up on the brush. I'm not trying to paint trees. I'm just pushing up. See how nice a job that does when you just use the upward motion of the brush. I'm just pushing into the canvas and up and away. Have tons and tons of trees going on here. Okay, we've been painting for a little over an hour, and we're probably a good 2/3 of the way done, I hope, I think. Okay, so lighten these up in some areas where it looks too dark to me. Clean up some areas where I got too much red. Step back and see if that looks like close to what I'm using for a photograph. Okay, there we go. Now let's think about what goes in the bottom here. I've got some dark colors that I've got to put in. Dark shadows, and then some snow. So I can put the darks in and then come back and put the snow over it. Oops, that's Prussian blue. I didn't want Prussian blue. Prussian blue will fill your brush up in a hurry. I'm going to get some Van Dyke brown and some midnight black. I'm going to start coming in here and putting in something what looks like to be some of the ground area under these trees, leaving some room for some snow and coming right down to the water level, kind of like I painted up there on the keyboards. I'm putting in the darks around the area where I want to have the snow. And so let's leave some room for snow. Let's connect the trees to the ground. Got some snow in here. Okay, I'm going to lighten that up, change the color a little bit. Don't need to have all one color. As a matter of fact, it's always a good idea to change your color up a little bit so you have some mixtures of browns. I'm using dark sienna now, almost pure out of the tube except for what it's mixing on my brush. Put a little bit of that over here so we don't end up with all that on the right side. Over here. Okay. Got a lot of snow floating around out in here, so I'm just going to pop these in and we'll come back and put some snow right over the top of that. So I haven't painted the snow, but you can tell where that snow is going to go. Black and some other colors here. All right. Before I forget, there's an area of light grasses. I think it's light grasses. Pick up some ochre or maybe a little bit of this cad yellow. Up in this area right here, there's a bunch of, picked up too much green on my brush there. Just want to swipe it once and get out. Has some green in it, but don't want to make it too bright. It's too near the edge of the painting. I don't want to have this draw your eye over there too much. I really want your eye to go up toward the mountain there, the keyboards. So keep this tone down just a little, but there is some nice little things worth showing in here. I'm using some of that cad yellow to give me some It's not working the way I want, but I'm going to leave it alone for now. Put a few more lights in here while I got it on my brush. Okay. All right, so that's that. I'm going to come back now and see if I can put in some of these things of snow. I'm going to just use my white with almost no, a little bit of tone in it, but not much. And I want to get plenty on my brush because I want to lay it on here, and I don't want it to peel off. Okay, so that's a little thing of snow back there. Wipe the brush off, come back, get some more glob of white, titanium white, and these are just little piles of snow that have not melted yet. And we see them sort of floating back in here. I'm going to put some tree trunks in front of that, and you'll see those in the background there in some areas. Just lightly throw them in. There's some that actually are picking up the ground color, so I'm going to let that happen. Clean the brush out again, go get some more white. And in here, put a big swatch. That's almost too green. Decided to change that back. Didn't like that color of green. Okay, more just little dabs of white paint here. Have some in the background floating around. We have some, oops, got too much paint on my, you get the wrong color paint and it's not going to work. You gotta get that, once you pick up that brown or green or whatever you're getting in your brush, you gotta get it out of there. Okay, so there's some nice little snow drifts that have not yet melted. Back in the background, I'm going to get some more of this midnight black and make myself a grayish color, maybe add some violet in there to get a background color of white. That's the snow that's kind of floating around back here in the background, inside behind some of these trees. So we're giving ourselves some depth by putting this in at a different color, and you can just see it back in there ever so slightly floating around back there. So now it looks like there's a woods you can almost get out of the lake and walk back there. Oh, I love these optical illusions. That's what painting's all about to me. Okay, so now we have a number of things we can do with these tree trunks back in here. I can maybe take this knife and scrape a few out, like this, to show some trunks of some trees. I'm just using this palette knife that's got a rounded tip on it, and just pulling up some things and go right in front of, if you go in front of one of these things, all of a sudden you have, I just pushed it back. That snow right behind that tree trunk. You can do the same over here. Just pull it up. Getting quite a few. So the optical illusion we're creating is that we got snow that's over here by the water that's getting more sun, snow that's back in the forest a little bit that's getting less sun, and we got some trees and things that go in front of it that actually help tell that story. It pushes them back. Anytime I put a tree trunk in front of that snow, all of a sudden the snow moves back. So that's all part of the optical illusion thing I wanted to show you today. I think a couple of these, I'm going to throw in a couple of things like right here, which will help push that back a little bit, even though it's close to the bank of the water. And we can always come back and use our script liner here and get it loaded with some thinner or with liquid, and give ourselves some darker trunks in there. Use a little dark sienna maybe. Probably even use some of this. You can use lighter trunks as well. I can come in and get this this grayish color, and I can put in some trunks that are, I'm not crazy about how that looks, but it's almost too light. So I'll just go over it again and make it less light. Let me try some of this dark here. Put in some, get some dark color here, get some midnight black, Van Dyke brown. It's got to be darker than what's there, you're not going to see it, all right? So, all right, I don't want to overdo that, so let's just stop on that. And start thinking about this water. I want to put in one more set of things here to see if I can, tone that down just a little. Okay, so now we've got this nice bank going on over here. And so how are we going to make this water look calm and smooth? This is an old trick. We use our liquid white. Let's see here, I want to get to this big brush. I'm going to have a lot of canvas left to cover there actually. Too much to make it one color. I don't want to make it all one color. If I can get this big brush cleaned out. Okay, let's go back and get some liquid white now. The way to make water look like it's smooth, the water in this painting is actually a little bit rough because it was kind of a windy day. But I want to make it smooth, and I want to show some reflections in it. Otherwise I'm going to have big blocks here. You remember my story about not having any 2 inches of your painting with nothing going on? So if I just paint this all blue, I'm going to have all kinds of stuff going on here that is one color. So I want to make it gradiated in color, and I want to bring some reflections down, and I may even put a rock or two in here in front if I feel like it, if I have the time. But let's not talk about that yet. Let's start with this water, and a good way to get water under to flow is the same technique we use for the sky. Get this underpainting here of liquid white. Could have put this on when I had the liquid white going a while ago, but didn't think about it. Plus I didn't want to get my hands in it while I was painting the scene above. I'm painting top to bottom, back to front. So I'm coming to the front now. So this is going to be my underpainting for my water. And let's see if I can kind of match this. Looks like it's all snow. It could be a snowfield when I just look at it on the camera. However, that's not what we want. You see now if I can get some, I wonder how close I could come to matching that color. I think Prussian blue with this white, it's going to come close. You see. Not too bad. Maybe I'll put a little phthalo blue in there as well. I don't know. Pick up some regular white. Phthalo, or this white takes forever to dry. Big swoops with the brush. Come back, get some more paint. Darker toward us, maybe a little lighter in the distance. That way we'll have variegation. All because I put that liquid white on, it left this nice, soft stuff going on. So I can have it lighter and I can variegate it and bring it forward, and by just putting in some other darker streaks like this, I can actually make you think there is some movement in it. Putting darker in the corners helps you see there might be something around this lake. Okay, now how are we going to get reflections? I want vertical brush strokes, and the vertical brush strokes I think I'm going to make with my flat brush instead of my filbert. And the reason is because the flat brush has a nice flat edge on it. I can use that, or I could use my fan brush as well. Either one will work. But these reflections are not in this painting, not in the photograph, I mean. So let's pull down, use the fan brush here, picking up some of the colors that are in the side bank of the lake back here. And I'm pulling down these reflections, picking up paint as I do that, so I'm trying to compensate for that. So let's put the dark in there. We can come back now and put a few of the greens in here. May think I'm running it, but wait till you see what I do as the last step here. So I'm just sort of putting in colors that represent what's up above it. I'm not trying to reflect accurately a tree or a mountain. I'm just using the colors that are in the mountains. Let's get some more of this mountain color here. It's picking up all the blue stuff. Gray, gray, gray. All right, now I could use my flat brush, or I could use this big Bob Ross landscape brush. So I'm going to show you, this is the technique that I've learned from Bob Ross, and you just basically take this and you start doing this. And so I've taken those reflections and just made very light strokes, brush strokes over them. And I'm left with these parts that if I want some more of that, I can put it in. Still got my brown colors here I can put in. Put a few more there, darken it up a little bit. Pick up some gray for this area's in here. So using that brush as a almost like a blending tool helps me give all kinds of reflections and stuff in this water that really aren't in the photograph, but it helps me break it up so that it's not all one boring color. Over here I'm wiping the brush out after each stroke. All right. We've been going about an hour and a half on the painting at least. So I think I'm going to stop on that part. I'm trying to decide whether I want to put any rocks or anything in the foreground. There were some rocks in the area, but they were a lot closer to me. I zoomed in on this, if you remember. And I think maybe I'm just going to put in something that looks like a rock here in the foreground here. It doesn't quite look like a rock yet, but give me a minute. Starting to look a little bit like a rock. Maybe get my palette knife out here and try to see if we can do some work with a palette knife. I haven't used a palette knife for quite a while, but they're really good for stuff like this. I'm not using the Bob Ross palette knife, but I'm using one of these little jobs that, because you can get a mixture of colors on them, and if I keep going over that, it'll all turn to mud. It'll all turn to the same color. But if I stop and try to get 3 values in there, I can get it looking like maybe a couple of rocks. And let me see if I can put another little piece right here. This is not accurate to the lake or it is close. If I zoomed way back, you'd see some rocks next to the edge of the lake. But right now I'm going to just leave it at that and say this little thing down here helps balance a little bit of this heavy mountain up on the left. And really I could probably even make this a little bigger. And just let the painting knife do its thing and don't overdose on it. Put maybe a highlight of some sort on there. It could have a little snow on it maybe. All right. I'm going to stop with that. I want to thank all of you for hanging in there with me and watching the whole thing here today. It's been fun for me. I hope it's been fun for you. I'm going to try to sign this now and if I can get enough of my blue color on here with a thinner on my script liner. And left a place over here on the left for me to put my signature. Pick up a little more, running out. Can't quite see that last letter. All right. Okay, folks. I think I'm going to zoom back now and say thanks again for joining me today. I hope this was fun for you, and hope you give this painting a try. Let me know how you do. Check out my website. When I get this edited, remember, I will have the sketch on the website, and you can actually pick it up and use it as a sketch for your painting. And give this a try and tell me how you do on it. And check out my Facebook page, check out my website, and leave me some comments. Tell me how you like this. I'll do a watercolor painting next week, next Wednesday, and same time, same place. So if you're into watercolor as well, you might want to check that one out. So anyway, I think that's all I wanted to say for you today. And until I see you again, this is Larry Hamilton saying so long for now. Goodbye.